G'day legends and welcome back to the channel. Today we're doing something a little bit different and a little bit nerve-wracking because we've been hanging out with the Svedos. They've got their own business for mobile weighing on the road called SvedosWeigh. So we're going to make use of that today, and we're going to weigh our setup behind us, a 100 series Land Cruiser and our new age caravan. We haven't weighed it for a while. We did it when we first left, and about, I reckon, like 99% of other people, we were too heavy, so we had to make changes in those early days, which is why the car doesn't have any drawers or fridge or anything in the back. We have gone to the effort today to make ourselves sort of as heavy as we can be, the heaviest we ever travel. So I've got both main tank and sub tank in the car completely full. So I've got 135 litres of fuel in the car at the moment. Both our gas bottles on the front of the caravan are full. Both water tanks in the caravan are full, and we've got groceries. The only thing we're probably missing is I don't have a fresh carton of beer at the moment. So otherwise this is pretty well as heavy as we can be. So yeah, we're pretty interested to jump on the scales, especially see the balance as well. I'm quite interested to see how well we've been balanced because I put a lot of effort into that. And we'll see. I reckon, my guess is we might be a little bit heavy on the van, and I do have to worry about that rear axle. I know I'm going to be under my GVM on the car because we've been weighing as we go, just ourselves on some weigh bridges. So I'm pretty confident the car's going to be under its GVM, but that rear axle might be a little bit touch and go. So yeah, watch this space. They're going to be rolling in very shortly. We're going to head up to the back of this car park here to some flat ground and put us on the scales and see how we look.
How you doing, mate?
Good, mate. How you doing?
All right.
You excited to do this?
Are you excited for this?
I'm a little bit nervous, I'm not going to lie. I was explaining to these guys before, like I've weighed ourselves a few times on just like public weigh bridges and stuff. Yeah. But it's been since we first left that I've had every individual.
Yeah, things are always changing as well.
Yeah,
it's ideal that you either manage things or, you know, repeat the process every year or so.
Yeah, so every time we did a change, we tried to just go over and just keep an eye on it, but we're looking at big numbers. Yeah. So I am really interested to see today, especially balance as well. I reckon that'll be a bit of a learning curve for me.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
And like I think we've talked about, rear axle might be a bit of a...
Yeah, we'll see how you go. The big steel rear bar on the back certainly isn't going to help that situation.
No,
but
I'm hoping taking the drawers out in the fridge has been enough to take that light off, but we'll see. Let's get it on the scales and see how we go. Yeah,
so look, the process is we're just going to weigh the vehicle first.
Okay.
We're going to weigh you hitched and unhitched. Okay. And that's in order to make sure that you're compliant when you're hitched and unhitched, because what we find sometimes is people will go over on their front axles. Oh wow, the flies are quite bad here, aren't they? Yeah. No, it doesn't take much to go over on the front axle.
I suppose if you put a bull bar or winch.
A bull bar or a winch, a set of lights, pretty much everyone who's got that and nothing on the rear is going to be over on the front axle when they're unhitched. But then once you hitch up, that'll lift up, the front axle will be okay, and then all that weight transfers onto the rear axle. So we just like to have a look how you're looking.
Sounds good. Yep.
Hitched and unhitched, and once we've done that, we can get the kids out of the car, they can jump in our van and be entertained by Kaylee and Mel, and then we'll get the numbers on the van and we'll take a look and see how you're going.
Alright, let's do it.
So what I'm doing here, guys, is I'm just going to put a set of max tracks underneath the van tyres, because once he lifts up onto the scales, he ends up going up about 60 mils. If this van is then sitting like this, it's going to impact the axle numbers on the van. So what I'm trying to do is make the van sit level, and as they travel, so we're weighing on a level platform. When you're ready, mate, bring her up. Keep coming. Keep coming. Move. Step that part. A little bit more. So I'm just going to get these numbers of the vehicle now, then I'll unhitch you. You can stay in the car for that. We'll get those numbers and then we're done with the car. Alright, we're just getting the second set of numbers now without the vehicle, sorry, without the caravan on. So basically what I've done is I've weighed the vehicle with the caravan hitched up. I've now unhitched the caravan. So the vehicle's all finished now. What we're going to do is roll off the max tracks and then we can reposition the scales under the caravan's tyres and get the numbers for the caravan.
Okay.
So if we just roll off the max tracks now, you can then get the kids out of the car. We don't need them in the car anymore.
So the benefit to doing this as casually as we are, now that the car is done with all our body weight in there, the kids are actually going to just jump in the Svedos van here. Kaylee and Mel can help look after Heathy boy. He's grown quite accustomed to them now, and then I'll help Brett move the scales around and we'll put the van up on the scales and we'll see how we go from there. Knock knock.
Hello. Hello. Come in. Hello.
Shoot them flies. Fly dance. Fly dance. Okay, the car is all done. As much as I've been tempted, I haven't looked at the results. I was tempted to give it a little sneak peek, but I'm going to hold off. Brett's now just been running around getting the scales in the right position for the caravan tyres, and then I'll pull the caravan forward up onto the scales and we'll check the ATM of the van. Like I said, I reckon it might be a little bit heavy there given that we're full of absolutely everything at the moment. I reckon we might go over a little bit, but I think there's room for me to get an upgrade if that's the case, or just travel with less water. But Brett will tell us shortly, I suppose.
Correct. Alright, bring her up. Keep going. That's up one. Keep going. Coming down now. Alright, we're going up the second one now. Hold up. Just inch it forward. Little more. Little more. Little more. Little more. That'll do, like a pro. You can jump out and give me a hand, Mark. Just for safety, we're going to chock the van up so it can't go anywhere once he unhitches.
Are we putting your tow ball thing under it again? Or?
We will be, yeah. Okay. So I'll go around and chock up the other side. Yep. If you get yourself ready to lift it up, and then you'll drive forward and out of the way and the tow ball scale will go in.
Yeah.
There's a drill down here, Mark.
Yeah, I'll use yours.
Yeah, just use mine so that all of your equipment is where it is when you travel, so we get your numbers and everything you have on board. I've got the Alright, cool. Roll it forward. Just go forward about a metre so we got space to get the tow ball scale in. Cool, that'll do. Alright mate, the final number, and what I would say is the most important number when it comes to the balance of the caravan, and that's the tow ball mass. So the reason why it is so important is it's incorporated into a couple of parts of your weighing, of your compliance numbers. So it's a part of the caravan's overall weight, or the ATM, and it's a compliance number in itself. But it also goes into the weight of the vehicle. So this part here, the tow ball mass, is carried by your vehicle. We expect it to be around 10% of the caravan's weight. So let's say your caravan is 3150, is it?
That's my max ATM, yes.
ATM's 3150. Let's assume it's sitting at 3150. Could be around 10%, could be about 315. I'm struggling to speak these flies. I don't want them going in my mouth.
You're doing over your mouth for long enough.
I just have to keep doing this. But
I'm pretty confident that when we first got weighed, I actually sit a little bit low. So I reckon Brett will find that today as well. But you've done the proper measurement of the height, which I don't think they did at my previous weight.
Correct.
So let's see how...
We did that off camera, but we weighed the height that Mark was as he's travelling, and we've set our scale at that height. That's why I've got these chocks in here to make sure it's sitting at the exact height. But the thing that catches most people, and the final number that I haven't touched on, is this tow ball mass actually goes onto the rear axle of the car as well, but not just at a 1-to-1 ratio. It goes in at a ratio of 1 to 1.5. So every 100
1.5?
1.5.
Wow.
So every 100 kilos here is 150 kilos onto your rear axle. That's why a lot of people end up going over on their rear axle.
That's because it's a pivot.
That's right. So if you notice, once the caravan goes onto your vehicle, the vehicle will lift up at the front.
Yep.
And sink down at the rear, and that weight shifts backwards, and so because of that pivot, the rear axle ends up carrying a lot more weight in the vehicle. That's the most common number that we see go over on most people, and it's why you and I are most concerned about your rear axle today.
Question for you, and I don't know if you know the science behind it, but do you reckon the length that the toe pitch hangs off from the rear axle changes that ratio a little bit? Like a wagon would be a little bit closer than, say,
it would do, and that's why we say it averages at about 1.5.
Yeah,
mine, I've actually taken the numbers on mine, and mine was 1.42.
Right. Okay.
And I would have to run through the process. I could do that, actually, go through everything that I've weighed and
yeah,
see if I can get an average.
It would be interesting to see a wagon, which is a little bit closer than a ute that hangs over the back a fair bit, and see if that ratio does change a bit.
And the last thing that I touched on is the toe ball mass is one of the most pivotal numbers as to your caravan's balance. So do you know what percentage we want our toe ball mass to be sitting at?
We want it to be at about 10%.
That's right. A lot of the Australian vehicle manufacturers suggest that it sits between 9 and 11%. We say you're okay between 8 and 12%. Anything under or over that, I'm starting to say, can we move things around and fix things before you leave today?
Yep.
So yours being 3150, 3125 was it?
3150,
we want it to be around 315 kilos, so let's drop it down and see where we are. Just slow it down a little bit.
Yeah, she's a bit lower.
Yeah, so as expected, we're sitting a little bit light on the toe ball. Now, as you're aware, and as I pointed out as you come in, you're sitting in a little bit nose down, aren't you? And there's a reason, well, there's the reason why you're sitting lighter over here is it can be the distribution of your load, but also when you're sitting nose down on a dual axle caravan, it actually makes your toe ball lighter, which is kind of counterintuitive. So a single axle caravan like mine, it's only pivoting on my one wheel. So once I go down like this, it gets heavier here. But I'll find something to kind of give an example for you. Think of this bar as your caravan. Because you have two axles, once you're sitting nose down, this front suspension system is actually working and pushing back up.
Oh, against you, yeah.
So that ends up pushing up, leading to a lighter toe ball mass, versus if you were sitting nose up, your rear suspension system is pushing up, leading to a heavier toe ball mass. It's hard to wrap your head around.
A little bit,
I think that example explains it pretty well. It's what I've been trying to do with clients. But that's the science behind what's going on there.
Okay, so
now we've
is
got
that
all
something
the
we could
numbers.
potentially play with today, is adjust this on the scales?
We can
and see if
assess
it
what
helps?
level you are, and we can bring that toe ball mass up, and we can say that's how heavy you will be, because you are lighter, and that's one of the things that we'll do. What I would normally do is say, this is how you arrive, let's have a look at your numbers. Then we come back and we start altering things around and trying to improve your balance. That's part of the service that we provide.
Let's do it then. Well, I'm not sure if I'm ready to see all these numbers now.
So real quick, I'm going to go and get the numbers, put them into the computer, and then we'll have a look how Mark's sitting.
Okay. Be gentle with me, I know I've got a little bit of weight to lose.
And that's the hardest thing about what I do, mate, is I feel like a doctor and I'm like, you're terminal, I'm sorry, I can't help you. It can be not good, but often we can help people too. So sometimes it feels good, but sometimes the answer is you might need a different vehicle or a different caravan.
Oh, I hope not. I love my cruiser.
I know you're very attached to the 100. You've had it for a long time, and I don't want to see you going down that way. But let's have a look and find out.
Let's do it.
So we're going to scroll through the report.
Okay.
First thing that we're looking at is your caravan.
Okay.
You see we've got a few red numbers on here.
Yes.
So your toe ball mass is within its tolerance of being 350 kilos. However, your gross trailer mass is over its compliance level by 40 kilos.
Okay.
Your aggregate trailer mass is over its compliance limit by 106 kilos.
Yeah.
Now there is a fix to that which we'll talk about.
Okay.
It's about seeing an engineer, because and we might as well talk about that right now.
Okay.
So your vehicle, your caravan, on its compliance plate had some numbers.
Yes.
And what those numbers mean. So
I know ATM.
ATM's your aggregate trailer mass, how heavy you're allowed to be. As we see, you're over by 100 kilos.
Yes.
There.
And then GTM's not including the toe ball mass?
That's right. So GTM is the weight traveling through the wheels going into the ground.
Roger.
And then your toe ball mass is the weight going through the toe ball going onto the vehicle. You combine your toe ball mass and your GTM, that gives you your ATM limit.
Yeah. Okay.
However, you've got another number in there, and that is your AGL. That's your axle group loading. That's the capacity of those axles.
Right. Wouldn't that just be the GTM, or do they change it?
Well, you would think so, wouldn't you? But some manufacturers, for some reason, make the AGL higher than the ATM limit.
Right.
Whether that to be to make the caravan look like it's a lighter caravan to appeal to a wider audience.
Yeah, right.
I think that's probably the most likely reason, but I can't speak to why they do what they do. But the fact is, your AGL limit is 3200. If you were to bring your GTM up to that limit, so up from 2980 to 3200, you could then, on that same ratio that you have between your GTM and your ATM, bring up your ATM as well.
Yes.
So if we calculate that forward, your GTM can go up from 2980 up to 3200.
Yep.
Your ATM can go up from 3150 to 3420.
Right.
In order to do that, you need to speak to an engineer.
Right. Yep.
And now that engineer might find some things you need to change, or that engineer might say you've got everything you need.
Oh, yeah.
And it could be just a case of handing over the money to get an upgraded compliance limit.
Yeah.
So let's say, in theory, we take your caravan up to 3420 and 3200.
Yes.
So you're then within your limit. 3400 would be your new limit. You're 3256, so you're comfortably within your limit.
Yeah, I got 100
and remember, you are fully loaded as well.
Yes, we are fully loaded. Yeah.
Your GTM would go up to 3200. You're currently 3020, so you would solve that problem by seeing an engineer.
Easy. Okay.
So this is the part where we can kind of say you can go down this path. Alternately, we need to find 100 odd kilos out of the caravan.
We always knew that we could get an ATM upgrade. They said that, but we tried to not spend that money and just keep our weights low.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, we haven't been able to do that. Things creep in and we're at, 106 kilos over.
So the last red number that you're seeing on here is your tow ball mass percentage. You're sitting at 7.2%.
Yeah.
I would like that tow ball mass percentage to be a little bit higher for your balance.
Yep.
So in order to do that, I think the first action that we can take is to raise it.
Yep.
As we've talked about, that's going to bring your tow ball mass up a bit.
Yes.
It might not get you within 8%, but it'll make a difference. So we'll make that alteration and we'll see what the number looks like.
Okay.
Then what we can do is move things around. So we're going to want to get a little bit more weight on your front drawbar. You can see you have nothing on your front drawbar.
No, because I couldn't, before I got my GVM upgrade, I didn't want to put any more tow ball weight on. Yeah. Because then it puts more on the car. So.
And obviously that's the catch. We want to bring your tow ball mass up a little bit to improve your balance, but then we've got to worry about your rear axle.
And we'll get to that next, I guess.
And that is exactly what we're going to look at now. So we know the numbers for the caravan, but how's your vehicle looking?
Yep.
The part that we are nervous about. Here's your vehicle without being in combination.
Okay. Well, that's okay. You got me all excited.
Yeah. Oh, I actually thought you might have seen a potential issue here. So your gross vehicle mass, you can weigh 3,500. When you're not in combination, you're weighing 3238. You've got 262 kilos to spare. Now your tow ball mass is carried directly by the GVM. Yes. So this number here is going to increase by your tow ball mass.
Is that 236 or whatever it was?
Right, so your tow ball mass was 236. You've got a spare 260 to go. But if we bring that heavier, then your GVM is going to be approaching its limit.
Yeah.
Okay, your front axle was within its limit by 24 kilos when you're not in combination. And this is what I was explaining.
Yeah.
I mean, you are compliant, but put a winch on the front and you're no longer compliant.
Which I had a winch. I've removed that.
And that's what happens to like pretty much every four-wheel drive out there that's all done up on the front with their bars and their winches and light bars and all those things. They're all over on the front axles.
Yeah.
And that's why we go through this process. It's just to point that out to people.
Yeah, yep.
Lastly is your rear axle. So you've got 238 kilos to spare on your rear axle.
It's probably not enough.
Exactly. So as I've explained to you, the tow ball mass is going onto your rear axle at a 1 to 1.5 ratio.
Yep.
So we know that we're about 230 as it is.
Yep.
It's going to be putting on about
350,
380 onto your rear axle. So I think we're going to see a red number here when we look at you in combination. Right. So let's bring you up in combination. We'll start from the top.
Yep.
You're within your tolerance for your brake to towing capacity. You're allowed to tow a 3.5 ton van. Your van's 3256, so you're okay there.
Yep.
You're within your gross vehicle mass. You're allowed to be 3,500 kilos. You're 3470. You've only got 25 to spare. So if
I'm heavier than I expected.
If we start increasing your tow ball mass, I think we're going to come into some issues with your gross vehicle mass as well.
Yeah. Unless, what if I move some stuff that I'm currently carrying in the car back into the
that is a solution
once I get the ATM upgrade,
and that is the path that we're going to have to go down for you.
Yeah,
that's the only thing that I can think of, because we've been talking about this and they don't really offer GVM upgrades for your 100 series.
No,
there's a mob in Queensland that'll do it, but you're from WA, so
yes, and it's you don't get much change from $10,000 for that.
Yeah. Next, gross combination mass, you're allowed to. Now the 100 series are funny. Do you want to explain the story with the 100 series, because you're more familiar with it than me?
The 100 series is pre-documented GCM, so it technically doesn't have a GCM. It's just been commonly accepted that it's the GVM plus 3.5 ton towing,
Which is the towing capacity.
I have a GVM upgrade, but we did it based on the previous GVM, of the 3260 plus 3.5. So we didn't do a 3.5 plus 3.5. We left the GCM at what it was before my upgrade. So yeah, bit of a funny one with the old 100 series, but
so because it's not documented, basically the number that we've input in here is his brake towing capacity plus his gross vehicle mass, instead of finding a specific GCM.
Yeah,
that's 100 series and some of the other older vehicles as well.
Yeah.
Next, we're coming into our axle. So as I touched on, your front axle has become lighter once the Caravan comes on.
Yep.
And some of that weight has now shifted onto your rear axle. And this is the number that we're worried about, and we have a red number.
Yeah.
We have 132 kilos over on our rear axle limit.
Yeah.
Which is quite a substantial number.
It is a big number, yeah.
So we're talking about adding, you have 100 kilos to spare in your Caravan if we do the upgrade.
Yep.
And 130 kilos from the car to the Caravan. It's not quite going to compute.
No, not very easily. Yep.
This is the part where I feel like the doctor saying that you're terminal, because without being able to find a big GVM upgrade for your car,
the only other option is I take that big metal rear bar off and put a plastic bumper back on again.
Yeah, and we can account for that weight.
I also have the sub tank, which is 40 kilos, and I don't typically use the sub.
Is it filled today?
Yeah, it's full today.
Yeah.
Yep. So there's 45 litres hanging over the rear axle there as
well. So fuel's interesting. It's not actually like water. It's not one to one. It's about, so if it's 45 kilos, you could say you got 42 kilos of extra weight in there that will come out.
And that sits over the rear axle. So if I wasn't running my sub,
the sub tank is right over your rear axle, is it?
No, behind.
Right behind it.
Yeah, it sits up in this well here. So
yeah, so we could expect if we emptied out the sub tank, you might get to about 80 kilos over on your rear axle.
Yeah.
And it becomes a little bit more achievable. It's to find 80 kilos in here. I think it might involve taking off the rear bar.
That I think is about 80 kilos.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really didn't want to. That's why I got rid of the drawers.
Sorry, my friend.
No, that's all right.
But that's the end of the process. You know what you are now.
Yeah, and I think it's all fixable. I won't like it, but it's fixable, which is the important part. All right. Okay, wasn't that a bit of an eye-opener? Like I mentioned while we were filming, while we've been travelling, we have weighed ourselves quite regularly, at least once a year, whenever we could find a nice flat entry weigh bridge where you didn't have to drive up onto, because that would allow me to come over with the car, measure the car in combination, then bring the van over and measure as a whole combination, and then through that I could come back with just the car and I could work out all the differences. But what this highlighted to me was, without being able to do the individual axles, I never picked up the fact that I was so over on the rear axle. I knew I was under my GVM, though I was heavier than I expected, and I knew I was under my GCM, and I did know that if we were completely full of water and gas and groceries and everything, that we do go over in the van. So we were 40 kilos over when we're in combination, so over the GTM, 106 as the ATM, which I'm not too sure why that matters as much, because the ATM is when the Caravan jockey wheel is down, it's not going anywhere, but we will fix that anyway. Brett has given me a contact for the engineering manager, and that's actually where we left from anyway. So when we swing back through for Christmas with family, we'll see that engineer, get the ATM upgrade done. It's only going to be beneficial for when we eventually sell the van as well, to give it a bit of extra payload. And I don't think it's going to be hard, because everything under this van was engineered higher. We've got the Walkinshaw chassis and we've got the Cruise Master suspension that is all rated to 3.5 tonne. So it might just be the brakes, being that they are 4 years old, that they want to upgrade to give us the ATM upgrade. So I don't see that being much of an issue, so that's pretty easy to fix. And for now, until we get that sorted, we just won't use one of our water tanks, because that's 110 litres of water, 110 kilos, and our van is very stable whether we use front or back tank, it doesn't matter. So yeah, we'll just not use one of our water tanks for now until we can get that sorted. So the van is a very easy fix. But the car, yeah, that's a little bit trickier. The easy fix would be to just get rid of that rear bar that I've got, but I really don't want to. I don't want to put the tyre back underneath. and then they'll be putting a plastic bumper on again. So I don't want to go down that path, so we're not going to do it drastic measures just yet. We are here in the Tumby Bay area on the Lower Eyre Peninsula for the next 4 weeks. So while we're here, I'm going to take off the gas bottle and the jerry can that are on the roof, and I do have an extra swing arm on the back. So once we got the GVM upgrade earlier this year, I put that extra swing arm back on again in the hope that I could put the jerry can and the gas bottle down next to the spare. But now that I can't afford that weight, that will go, which would hopefully save me between 15 and 20 kilos just in that swing arm alone. Then the gas bottle and the jerry can and all that overhanging in the rear axle, given the ratio, that might add a little bit. And before the GVM upgrade, I knew I could never use my sub tank, so I only did when we were really remote. So now that we've got the GVM upgrade, I hoped I could, but we could just go back to not using the sub tank. The main tank's 90 litres as it is, so I get about 400 kilo range just off the main tank. It's really not a requirement for me to use that sub tank. So there's another 45 litres of diesel, 42 kilos of weight there overhanging that rear axle as well. So once I made those changes, Liam's bike is going because he's outgrown it. So the bike will go, that's another 5 to 10 kilos. If I move my tool bag out and put that in the car, in the caravan, there's another 20 kilos out. So it should start bringing us pretty close. Excuse me. And we are still hanging out with the Svedos as well down here for the next month. So hopefully once I make those changes, we'll jump back on the scales just as the car. We know how much tow ball weight I've got and how much that translates over the rear axle. So if I can just take the car over and see if we've got enough wiggle room there, it should tell us if we're going to be right once we're in combination or not. So we'll try and do that again before we leave them. I really hope I can bring that close enough that it brings us under that rear axle, because every other number was green, it's just that rear axle. So we'll see how we go, and then as a last resort, I do have family and friends with 100 series back in WA. Maybe I can get rid of my rear bar and take one of their plastic bumpers, and we can do a bit of an exchange there. I don't want to go down that path, but if I have to, we will. Like, we know our setup is stable. We wouldn't have been able to travel the way we do if it wasn't, but we do want to be legal. We want to be within our weights for safety reasons and insurance reasons. This is our whole life. Everything we own is in this setup, so we will do what we can to stay legal, and I think we should be able to achieve that pretty easily. So, well, yeah, watch this space. We'll make these changes. I'll hassle Brett to get the scales set up again. I'll jump back on them, and same for you guys. If you're watching this, Brett is going to be in the Lower Eyre Peninsula for the next month, so reach out to him if you're down this way and want to jump on the scales yourself. And then from there he is heading on to the York and the Fleurieu, and he's probably going to be in South Australia for at least another 3 months. So yeah, reach out. Highly recommend it. It was a bit of an eye-opener for me. I thought I was doing a good job myself, but there was no way for me to know that that rear axle was as far over as it was. So yeah, we've got a little bit of work to do. I'm hoping I can get it within just by moving a few things around and getting rid of a few things, but we'll see. So watch this space. I'll update you soon. So with that, I will close this out. Thank you for watching. I hope you got something out of it. I sure did. Brett definitely taught me a few things, especially the counterbalance. Dropping the tow ball at the front of the tandem axle actually lightens the tow ball load, which was a little bit counterintuitive and not something I really thought of. So yeah, I definitely got something out of this, and do highly recommend going and getting professionally weighed before and during your travels, because things will be pretty good. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you next week in next week's vlog.